Admiral Dongwoo Kim stood at the command center watching the stars through the massive window. Earth looked beautiful from up here, but he knew better than to trust beauty in space. The last 50 years had taught humans that aliens meant trouble and nothing else. His gray hair and scarred hands told stories of countless battles against creatures from distant worlds who thought Earth looked like easy prey. The alarm started ringing across the station. Red lights flashed everywhere as officers ran to their positions. Lieutenant Hyun-Soo Nam rushed to the Admiral with a datapad in his hands. His young face showed worry and confusion instead of the usual fear that came with alien contact. "Sir, we have ships approaching from the outer system," Nam said while trying to catch his breath. "They are not like anything we have seen before." Kim took the datapad and looked at the readings. 20 ships moved toward Earth in perfect formation. They looked smooth and elegant, like someone had carved them from crystal. No sharp edges or weapon ports that humans were used to seeing on alien vessels. These ships seemed almost peaceful, but Kim had learned never to trust first impressions. When it came to aliens, "How long before they reach weapons range?" Kim asked while studying the display. "4 hours, sir, but they are slowing down," Nam replied. "They seem to want to talk." Kim laughed, but there was no humor in it. Every alien species that came to Earth claimed they wanted to talk. The Krillians wanted to talk right before they tried to harvest human brains. The Zephyrites wanted to talk before attempting to turn Earth into a mining colony. Talk was just another word for lies when it came to aliens. "Get me Captain Bo-Ram." "Lee," Kim ordered. "I want fighters ready to launch the moment those ships get too close." Bo-Ram Lee was already suiting up when the call came through. She had been flying combat missions since she was 18, and now, at 35, she commanded the best fighter squadron in the Earth Defense Force. Her black hair was always pulled back tight, and her eyes never showed fear. Other pilots called her the Iron Falcon because she never backed down from a fight. "Admiral, what are we dealing with?" Lee asked through the communication system. "Unknown aliens claiming peaceful intentions," Kim replied. "Same story as always," Lee smiled as she climbed into her fighter. She had heard this story many times before. Aliens always claimed to be peaceful right up until they started shooting. Her squadron was ready for action and her weapons were fully charged. Whatever these crystal ships wanted, they would not get it easily. Dr. Hae-Won Park was different from the military personnel around her. She studied alien languages and cultures which made her valuable, but also made the soldiers nervous. She believed that not all aliens were enemies, but decades of war had made that opinion very unpopular. Her office was filled with alien artifacts and translation equipment that most people found disturbing. "Admiral, I should be present when they make contact," Park said as she entered the command center. "We need to understand what they are saying," Kim looked at her with tired eyes. He respected her knowledge, but he had seen too many good people die because they trusted aliens. "Doctor, you can listen to their transmission, but you stay behind the blast shields." The alien ships stopped just outside Earth's defensive perimeter. They made no aggressive moves, and their weapons remained powered down. This confused many of the officers who expected immediate attack. Instead, a single transmission came through on standard communication frequencies. The voice was female and spoke perfect English with a slight musical accent. "People of Earth, this is Ambassador Kethva of the Villani Collective. We come to you, in this dark hour, to offer our assistance. A great danger approaches your world, and we wish to help you defend against it." Laughter filled the command center. Officers looked at each other with disbelief and amusement. Another species claiming they wanted to help Earth. It was almost insulting how predictable aliens had become. They all used the same tricks and the same lies. "Put me through to their ship," Kim ordered. The communication link opened, and Kim's stern face appeared on screens throughout the alien fleet. His voice carried the weight of authority and the coldness of someone who had seen too much war. "Ambassador Kethva, this is Admiral Kim of the Earth Defense Force," he said. "We have heard promises of help from aliens before. They usually end with humans dying and Earth under attack. State your real purpose or leave our system." The response came quickly, and the alien's voice remained calm, despite Kim's harsh tone. "Admiral, we understand your suspicion. Your species has faced many threats, and you have learned to defend yourselves well. But the enemy that comes now is beyond anything you have encountered. They are called the Devourers, and they consume entire worlds. Engineer Tae-min Choi was monitoring the alien ships from his position in the weapons control room. His instruments showed that their technology was advanced, but seemed focused on defense rather than offense. Their hulls contained materials he had never seen before, and their energy signatures were completely foreign. Most disturbing was that they appeared to be building something. "Admiral, the alien ships are deploying some kind of equipment," Choi reported. "It looks like they are setting up a perimeter around our outer system." This news made Kim angry. The aliens were claiming to help while positioning themselves for attack. It was the same pattern he had seen dozens of times before. First, they asked for permission, then they took position, then they struck when Earth's guard was down. "That confirms it," Kim said to his officers. "They are preparing for invasion just like all the others." Ambassador Kethva continued speaking despite the growing hostility from Earth. "The devices we deploy are quantum field generators. They will create barriers that can slow the Devourers. Advance. We have seen what these creatures do to worlds that cannot defend themselves. They leave nothing behind but empty space." Dr. Park studied the transmission carefully. The alien's words showed genuine concern and fear. Her translation equipment detected emotional stress in the voice patterns. Either this Kethva was an excellent actor or she truly believed Earth was in danger. "Admiral, perhaps we should listen to what they have to say," Park suggested quietly. Kim turned to her with eyes full of frustration. "Doctor, how many times have aliens offered to help Earth? How many times did that help turn out to be real?" Park had to admit that the track record was not good. Every alien species that approached Earth had tried to conquer or exploit it in some way. But something felt different about these Volani. Their technology seemed designed for protection rather than destruction. The transmission continued, and Kethva's voice grew more urgent. "Admiral, the Devourers will arrive in 10 of your rotation cycles. Our scouts have tracked them across 12 sectors, and they have consumed 17 worlds in their path. We barely escaped their advance ourselves, and we came here because we detected signs of intelligent life." Captain Lee's voice crackled through the communication system from her fighter patrol. "Admiral, I have visual on their perimeter equipment. It looks like some kind of energy field generator, but I cannot determine its purpose." Kim made his decision based on 50 years of experience fighting aliens. Every species that came to Earth had an agenda, and none of them included helping humans. These Volani might have better technology and prettier ships, but they were just another threat wearing a friendly mask. "Ambassador Kethva," Kim said with finality in his voice, "Earth has survived every alien threat through our own strength and determination. We do not need saviors, and we do not trust aliens who claim to offer help. Remove your ships from our system immediately, or we will remove them for you." The silence that followed stretched for long minutes. Finally, Kethva's voice returned, and this time it carried sadness along with urgency. "Admiral, we will comply with your request and withdraw to the edge of your system. But please understand that we cannot abandon you completely. When the Devourers arrive, you will see that some enemies are too powerful for any species to face alone." The alien ships began moving away from Earth's defensive perimeter, but they did not leave the system entirely. They took positions near the outer planets and continued working on their mysterious equipment. Kim watched them go with satisfaction. Another alien threat had been turned away through human strength and resolve. But Dr. Park continued studying. Their transmissions and something in the data troubled her deeply. The Volani were genuinely afraid of something, and they had come to Earth not as conquerors, but as refugees seeking alliance. She wondered if humanity had just made a terrible mistake by refusing their help. 3 days passed since the Volani fleet withdrew to the outer system, but Admiral Kim could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. The aliens had not left completely, and their ships continued working on projects that Earth's sensors could not fully understand. Long-range scans showed massive energy buildups around the system's edge, but the purpose remained unclear. Lieutenant Hyun Soo Nam spent his off-duty hours studying the data from the alien encounter. Military regulations said he should leave such analysis to higher-ranking officers, but something about the Volani transmission bothered him. Their technology readings showed power levels far beyond anything Earth had encountered, yet they had retreated without resistance when ordered to leave. Nam's computer screen filled with energy signatures and mathematical models as he tried to understand what the Villani were building. The quantum field generators appeared to be creating some kind of barrier around the entire solar system. Such a project would require enormous resources and perfect coordination between multiple ships. Why would invaders waste time on defensive systems? General Sujin Han arrived at the command center early as she always did. Her responsibilities included coordinating planetary defense systems, and she took that job seriously. Earth's surface bristled with weapons that could destroy entire fleets, but something about the current situation made her nervous. The Villani had positioned themselves perfectly to monitor all approaches to Earth, yet they showed no signs of aggressive intent. "Admiral, we are receiving strange readings from deep space monitoring stations," Han reported as she reviewed the overnight reports. "There are gravitational anomalies detected beyond the outer planets." Kim studied the data with growing concern. Space itself seemed to be bending in ways that physics said should not be possible. Whatever was causing these effects had to be massive beyond imagination. The readings suggested something was approaching the solar system, but moving in ways that defied conventional understanding. Dr. Hae-Won Park had been working around the clock to decode more Villani transmissions. Her translation equipment picked up fragments of their internal communications, and what she found made her blood run cold. The aliens were discussing previous encounters with something called Devourers, and their descriptions painted a picture of absolute destruction. "Admiral, I need to speak with you privately," Park said as she entered Kim's office with a data pad full of translated material. Kim looked up from his tactical displays with tired eyes. He had been studying Earth's defensive capabilities and wondering why the Villani seemed so confident that normal weapons would be useless against their supposed enemy. "What have you found, Doctor?" Kim asked while pouring himself another cup of coffee. Park activated her datapad and began reading from the translated communications. "The Villani are discussing worlds that no longer exist. 17 planets in their path have been completely consumed, leaving nothing behind but empty space. They describe entities that eat matter itself and grow larger with each world they devour." Kim listened but remained skeptical. Aliens were known for creating elaborate lies to justify their presence in human space. Still, the fear in the Villani communications seemed genuine, and their technology suggested they were far more advanced than most species Earth had encountered. Captain Bo-Ram Lee led another reconnaissance mission to observe the Villani positions. Her fighter squadron approached the alien perimeter carefully while scanning their equipment with every sensor available. What they found defied easy explanation. The Villani had constructed a network of energy generators that surrounded the entire solar system like a protective shell. "Command, this is Iron Falcon," Lee reported through encrypted channels. "The alien equipment appears to be some kind of defensive barrier. I am detecting quantum energy fields that could theoretically stop incoming objects, but the power requirements would be enormous." The implications troubled Lee as she guided her fighters through their patrol route. If the Villani were building defenses around Earth's solar system, then they expected something to attack, something big enough to threaten an entire star system. Her military training told her this could be an elaborate deception, but her instincts suggested otherwise. Scientist In-Ho Yu worked in the Deep Space Observatory where Earth's most sensitive instruments monitored the galaxy for threats. His equipment could detect energy signatures from incredible distances, and what he was seeing now made no scientific sense. Objects were approaching the solar system, but they seemed to be bending space and time around themselves. "The gravitational readings are off the charts," Yu reported to his supervisor. "Whatever is coming toward us has mass equivalent to small moons, but they are moving faster than should be possible." The supervisor studied the data with growing alarm. Earth's scientists had encountered many alien technologies, but nothing that could manipulate gravity on such a massive scale. These readings suggested objects that defied known physics, while approaching at speeds that would bring them to Earth within days. Nam continued his unauthorized analysis of the Villani technology and made a disturbing discovery. The quantum field generators were not designed for attack, but for defense against a very specific type of threat. The energy patterns matched theoretical models for stopping matter consumption at the molecular level. It was as if the aliens were preparing to defend against something that could eat planets. "This cannot be right," Nam muttered as he checked his calculations again. Nothing could actually consume matter on a planetary scale. But the mathematics were clear, and the Villani technology seemed specifically designed to counter such a threat. Nam realized he needed to report his findings, but military protocol demanded he go through proper channels. By the time his analysis reached command level, it might be too late to matter. Dr. Park made another breakthrough in her translation work when she discovered technical specifications in the Villani communications. The aliens were discussing power, requirements for their barrier system, and the numbers were staggering. They were preparing to defend against objects that could exert pressure equivalent to multiple star systems. "Admiral, I believe the Villani are telling the truth about this threat," Park said during the daily briefing. "Their power calculations suggest they expect to face something that requires defense on a galactic scale." Kim remained unconvinced, despite the mounting evidence. His experience told him that aliens always had hidden agendas, and elaborate stories were just another weapon in their arsenal. Earth had survived by trusting human strength rather than alien promises. Captain Lee's patrols continued monitoring the Villani perimeter, and she noticed increased activity around their ships. The aliens were working frantically to complete their barrier system, and their communications showed signs of urgency that seemed genuine. Whatever they expected to arrive was coming soon. The deep space monitoring stations detected more anomalies as objects continued approaching the solar system. The gravitational effects were becoming stronger, and some of the readings suggested things that violated basic laws of physics. Objects appeared to be consuming space itself while moving toward Earth. General Han coordinated with planetary defense systems to prepare for possible conflict, but Earth's weapons seemed inadequate compared to the scale of what the sensors were detecting. The approaching objects were too large and moved in ways that conventional weapons could not address. Engineer Taemin Choi studied the technical data from multiple sources and reached a conclusion that terrified him. The Villani barrier system was designed to stop matter consumption, but it required precise coordination between hundreds of generators. If even a few components failed, the entire defense would collapse. "Admiral, the alien defensive system has critical weak points," Choi reported. "If they are facing what their technology suggests, then partial failure means total destruction." Kim finally began to understand the scope of what Earth might be facing. The Villani had not come as conquerors, but as defenders against something that threatened all life in the galaxy. Their elegant ships and peaceful demeanor masked desperation born from witnessing unimaginable destruction. Nam's computer models showed the approaching objects would reach the outer system within hours rather than days. The gravitational effects were accelerating, and space itself seemed to be warping around the incoming threat. Whatever the Devourers were, they moved faster than any conventional spacecraft. Dr. Park received a final transmission from the Villani that chilled her to the bone. Ambassador Kethva was explaining to her people that the barrier might not be strong enough without Earth's cooperation. The humans had refused help, and now both species faced extinction together. "They are here," came the whisper through space, as Villani sensors detected the first signs of the approaching Holocaust. The Devourers had arrived at the edge of the solar system, and nothing would ever be the same again. The first Devourer appeared like a nightmare breaking through the fabric of space itself. Admiral Kim stared at the tactical display in horror as sensors tried to make sense of what they were detecting. The creature was massive beyond comprehension, stretching across distances that should have been impossible for any living thing. Its surface writhed with organic patterns that seemed to pulse with malevolent hunger. "Sir, the readings cannot be accurate," Lieutenant Nam said, while frantically checking his instruments. "The object is showing mass equivalent to a small moon, but it is clearly organic in nature." More Devourers emerged from the distorted space around the first one. Hundreds of the creatures materialized as if reality itself was giving birth to living nightmares. Each one was unique in its horrible design, but all shared the same terrible purpose. They moved through space like predators sensing prey, and their direction was unmistakably toward Earth. Dr. Mi-Young Lim worked desperately at her astrophysics station, trying to understand what her instruments were telling her. The creatures seemed to exist partially outside normal space and time, which explained how they could move faster than light without conventional propulsion. They were not ships in any sense that humans understood, but living entities that fed on matter itself. Admiral, the gravitational readings are impossible, Lim reported with fear in her voice. These things are creating their own space-time distortions. They are not bound by the same physical laws that govern normal matter, Captain Bo-Ram Lee launched, with her fighter squadron before receiving official orders. Her military instincts told her that conventional tactics would be useless against such enemies, but she had to try. Earth's fighters were equipped with the most advanced weapons humanity had developed, and she would not surrender without a fight. All units, this is Iron Falcon, Lee transmitted to her squadron. Target the lead creature with quantum torpedoes. Full spread on my mark. The fighters streaked toward the nearest devourer and unleashed their most powerful weapons. Quantum torpedoes that could destroy city-sized asteroids struck the creature's surface and simply disappeared. The weapons were absorbed into the creature's body without causing any visible damage. Worse, the devourer seemed to grow slightly larger after consuming the attack. Commander Yejin Kang watched from her space station as the horrifying truth became clear. Earth's most powerful weapons were not just ineffective against the devourers. They were actually feeding them. Every torpedo and energy beam that struck the creatures was converted into additional mass, making them stronger. All units cease fire immediately, Kim ordered as he realized what was happening. Weapons are ineffective. Repeat weapons are ineffective. But it was too late to stop the Earth Defense Force from launching its first major attack. Orbital weapons platforms opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons that could melt. Battleships fired continuously at the approaching creatures. Nuclear missiles designed to crack open alien dreadnoughts streaked toward their targets in massive volleys. The devourers consumed every attack without effort. Plasma beams disappeared into their writhing surfaces, while nuclear explosions were absorbed like drops of water falling into an ocean. The creatures did not even slow down as they fed on humanity's greatest weapons. Instead, they began moving faster as the additional energy fueled their advance. Pilot Wu Bin Shin found himself face-to-face with one of the smaller devourers and barely escaped with his life. The creature extended feeding tendrils that moved faster than his fighter could maneuver. Only desperate evasive action and emergency thruster burns saved him from being consumed along with his weapons. These things are not ships, Shin reported while his fighter limped back toward Earth. They are alive, and they want to eat everything, including us. The lead devourer reached Mars orbit and began the process that would haunt human nightmares forever. Feeding tendrils extended from its massive body and touched the red planet's surface. Where they made contact, the solid rock began to dissolve at the molecular level. Mars was being eaten alive, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Admiral Kim watched in helpless rage as the planet Mars simply disappeared. The devourer consumed the entire world in less than 3 hours, converting its mass into additional body tissue. What had once been humanity's first colonial world was now part of an alien monster that grew larger and more powerful with each bite. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the Volani fleet, Nam reported with desperation in his voice. The tactical display switched to show Ambassador Kethva, and her alien features were tight with fear and determination. Behind her, the bridge of her ship showed signs of frantic activity as her people worked to coordinate their defensive systems. Admiral Kim, the barriers are holding but barely, Kethva said while data streams flowed across her console. We need your ships to help reinforce the weak points in our defensive grid. If the barriers fail, we all die together. Kim stared at the display showing hundreds of planet-eating monsters pressing against energy fields that flickered and sparked under the immense pressure. For the first time in his military career, he faced an enemy that could not be defeated through superior firepower or tactical brilliance. Engineer Taemin Choi studied the Volani barrier system with new understanding. The quantum fields were designed to prevent matter consumption by creating interference patterns that disrupted the devourer's feeding mechanisms. But the system required precise coordination between multiple generators, and several sections were already showing signs of failure. Admiral, the alien defenses are failing in 3 sectors, Choi reported. If those barriers collapse, the creatures will break through to Earth. The Volani perimeter around the solar system suddenly blazed with brilliant energy as their quantum field generators activated at full power. Walls of pure force sprang up between the devourers and the inner planets, creating a barrier that held back the nightmare creatures like a dam holding back a flood. But the dam was cracking. Massive devourers slammed against the barriers with the force of colliding planets. Each impact sent shockwaves through the quantum fields that could be felt on Earth itself. The elegant Villani technology was being pushed beyond its design limits, and everyone could see it would not hold for long. General Sujin Han coordinated Earth's defensive positions, but felt utterly helpless against an enemy that fed on conventional weapons. Her orbital platforms and planetary defenses were worse than useless. They were actually helping the enemy grow stronger. Everything humanity had built to protect Earth was working against them. Dr. Haewon Park continued monitoring Villani communications and discovered the terrible scope of what they were facing. The Devourer swarm contained over 300 creatures, and they had consumed 17 civilizations on their way to Earth. Each world they devoured made them larger and more powerful. Admiral, the Villani are showing us tactical data about the creatures, Park reported. They have been tracking this swarm across multiple star systems. Every world in their path has been completely consumed. Several smaller devourers broke through weak points in the barrier and began feeding on the outer moons of Jupiter. The gas giants' satellites disappeared one by one as the creatures demonstrated their terrible efficiency. Nothing was left behind but empty space where worlds had once existed. Captain Lee regrouped her surviving fighters and tried to find some way to help, but conventional tactics were useless. Her weapons fed the enemy, and her ships could not match the speed of the feeding tendrils. She felt like a warrior trying to fight the ocean with a sword. The Villani barrier flickered and dimmed as more generators failed under the constant assault. Ambassador Kethva's voice filled Earth's communication channels with urgent pleas for cooperation. The barriers would not hold much longer without additional support from human vessels. Admiral, we cannot maintain the barriers alone. Kethva transmitted. Your ships must work with ours to create harmonic resonance patterns. It is the only way to strengthen the quantum fields enough to repel this many devourers. Kim realized that his choice was simple. Earth could swallow its pride and work with aliens or watch as both species were consumed by monsters that turned their greatest weapons into food. The irony was not lost on him that humanity's fierce independence had nearly guaranteed their extinction. All units, this is Admiral Kim, he broadcast to the Earth Defense Force. We are coordinating with Villani forces to reinforce their defensive barriers. Follow their technical instructions exactly. Our survival depends on perfect cooperation. The largest devourer in the swarm pressed against the main barrier directly between Earth and the approaching nightmare. The quantum field sparked and flared under pressure that could crush planets. Through the translucent energy wall, Admiral Kim could see feeding tendrils reaching toward his home world with infinite hunger. Admiral Kim swallowed 50 years of pride and prejudice as he opened communication channels with the Villani fleet. Every instinct told him that trusting aliens was a mistake, but watching Mars disappear had made the choice simple. Work together, or die together seemed to be the only options left. Ambassador Kethva. This is Admiral Kim, he transmitted, while watching his tactical display show hundreds of devourers pressing against failing barriers. Earth accepts your offer of alliance. Tell us what we need to do. The relief in Kethva's voice was obvious even through the translation systems. Admiral, we must coordinate our vessels to create harmonic resonance patterns. Your ships have powerful energy cores, but they operate on different frequencies than our technology. We will need to modify both systems, Major Jinho Park commanded. The marine engineering teams that would be responsible for installing alien technology on human ships. His men were trained for combat, not technical integration with species they had been fighting for decades. The idea of allowing aliens to modify Earth's military hardware went against every security protocol. Sir, this feels like giving the enemy access to our most sensitive systems, Park reported to Admiral Kim. How do we know this is not some elaborate plan to sabotage our fleet? Kim understood the Major's concerns, but the alternative was extinction. The Devourers were already probing the weaker sections of the Villani barriers, and it was only a matter of time before they broke through. Trust had to replace suspicion if anyone was going to survive. Technician So-Ra Kim worked frantically in the engineering bays as Villani technical specialists explained how to integrate their harmonic transmitters with human power systems. The alien technology was elegant and sophisticated, but operated on principles that human science barely understood. Every connection had to be perfect, or the resonance patterns would fail. The frequencies must match exactly, explained Veltar, the Volani engineer assigned to work with human technical teams. Even small variations will create destructive interference instead of protective barriers. Sora studied the alien diagrams and began to understand how different human and Volani approaches to technology really were. Humans built weapons for maximum destruction, while the Volani created systems for perfect harmony. Combining the two required abandoning human assumptions about how energy should be used. Captain Boram Lee led the first joint mission to reinforce a failing barrier section near Jupiter. Her fighter squadron had been equipped with Volani frequency modulators that allowed them to contribute to the quantum field network. The technology felt strange and unfamiliar, but the readings showed it was working. "Iron Falcon to all units," Lee transmitted as her squadron approached the weak point in the barrier. "Activate harmonic transmitters on my mark. Remember, we need perfect synchronization or we all die." The human fighters began transmitting energy, patterns that matched the Volani generators, and the barrier immediately strengthened. The section that had been flickering and failing suddenly blazed with renewed power. A massive devourer that had been pressing against the weak point was pushed back by the reinforced field. Colonel Dong-hyun Lee coordinated the complex logistics of integrating two completely different military organizations. Human crews had to learn Volani operational procedures, while alien technicians worked to understand Earth's command structure. Language barriers and cultural differences made every task 10 times more difficult. "We need standardized communication protocols," Lee reported during an emergency planning session. "Half our coordination failures are because humans and Volani use completely different tactical terminology." Dr. Haewon Park found herself serving as the primary translator between species that had never worked together before. Her linguistic expertise became crucial as human and Volani crews struggled to coordinate their efforts. Every misunderstood order could result in barrier failure and planetary death. Engineer Taemin Choi discovered that human power systems were actually more robust than Volani technology in some ways. Earth's military vessels were built to survive, damage, and keep fighting, while alien ships prioritized efficiency over durability. The combination created hybrid systems that were stronger than either could achieve alone. "Admiral, the modified power cores are producing 30% more harmonic energy than pure Volani systems," Choi reported with surprise in his voice. "Human engineering methods are crude, but they create very stable foundations." The barriers held but barely as more devourers arrived from deep space. The creatures seemed to possess some form of collective intelligence that allowed them to coordinate their attacks on the weakest points in the defense grid. Every time one section was reinforced, they would shift their assault to probe for new vulnerabilities. Lieutenant Hyun Sunam worked with Volani tactical specialists to understand how the devourers operated. The creatures were not mindless predators, but showed signs of strategic thinking and pattern recognition. They learned from each attack and adapted their methods to overcome defensive measures. "Sir, the creatures are testing our response times," Nam reported after analyzing attack patterns. "They probe different sections to see how quickly we can reinforce weak points, then concentrate their efforts where our reaction is slowest." The first major breakthrough came when human and Volani engineers discovered they could create quantum interference patterns that actually disrupted the devourer's feeding mechanisms. The creatures could consume matter and energy, but specific frequency combinations caused their molecular absorption processes to fail. "We can hurt them," Veltar announced with excitement as test results confirmed the theory. The interference patterns prevent them from breaking down matter at the quantum level. They cannot feed on energy that resonates at precise harmonic frequencies, but generating these disruption frequencies required perfect coordination between hundreds of ships operating as a single system. Human vessels had to abandon their independent combat doctrines and work in complete harmony with Volani formations. For Earth's military, the change was revolutionary and terrifying. Captain Lee found that fighting alongside aliens required completely different skills than battling against them. Her squadron had to maintain exact positions and timing, while following Volani coordination protocols. Individual heroics and aggressive tactics were replaced by precision teamwork that left no room for error. "This is not like any combat training we ever received," Lee reported during a brief break between missions. "We are not fighting the enemy, we are becoming part of a larger organism that fights the enemy." The barriers continued to weaken as days passed, and both human and Vellani crews pushed their systems beyond safe operating limits. Power cores began burning out from constant overload, while quantum generators failed from excessive harmonic stress. Every hour brought them closer to complete defensive collapse. Admiral Kim realized that the Alliance had changed both species in ways that went beyond simple cooperation. Human crews were learning to think in terms of harmony rather than domination, while Vellani teams gained appreciation for human determination and resilience. The Devourers had forced them to become something new. "Ambassador, we cannot maintain this level of energy output much longer," Kim transmitted to Kethva as status reports showed critical failures throughout the fleet. "Our ships are burning out faster than we can repair them," Kethva's response carried the weight of species that had fought this enemy before. "Admiral, this is why the Devourers have consumed so many worlds. They force defenders to exhaust themselves, maintaining barriers until the inevitable collapse. But together we are stronger than any civilization they have faced alone, engineer." Choi made a desperate discovery while studying power consumption data. The quantum disruption field that could repel Devourers required enormous energy, but it only needed to be generated for brief periods. Instead of maintaining constant barriers, they could create pulses of disruptive frequency that would drive the creatures away. "Admiral, I believe we can create a quantum pulse that will force the entire swarm to retreat," Choi reported while frantically checking his calculations. "But it will require every ship in both fleets to coordinate perfectly and most of our power. Systems will burn out from the effort." The plan was desperate and dangerous, but it offered the only hope of survival. Human and Vellani crews would have to work as one organism, generating a pulse of quantum disruption that covered the entire solar system. Success meant salvation, but failure meant both species would be consumed together. "All ships, this is Admiral Kim," he broadcast to the combined fleet. "We are attempting a coordinated quantum pulse to drive off the Devourer swarm. This is our only chance to save both our worlds. Every ship must maintain perfect harmonic resonance, or we all die." The final battle began not with explosions and plasma fire, but with the delicate harmony of hundreds of ships working as one living system. Admiral Kim watched his tactical displays as human and Vellani vessels moved into perfect formation across the solar system. Every ship had to maintain exact position and frequency, or the quantum pulse would fail catastrophically. Captain Boram Lee felt the weight of two civilizations resting on her squadron's ability to maintain harmonic resonance. Her fighters had been converted from weapons of war into precision instruments of a vast orchestra. The irony was not lost on her that humanity's salvation required abandoning everything that made them effective warriors. "Iron Falcon to all units," Lee transmitted as her fighters took their assigned positions. "Remember, we are not attacking the enemy. We are becoming part of something larger than ourselves. Individual heroics will kill us all." Engineer Taemin Choi monitored the power buildup across both fleets and watched with growing concern as energy readings climbed toward critical levels. The quantum pulse would require every ship to operate beyond safe limits, and many vessels would not survive the attempt. Success would cost both species dearly. "Admiral, power consumption is exceeding design tolerances on 70% of our ships," Choi reported while frantically rerouting energy systems. "We will lose most of the fleet even if the pulse succeeds." Kim accepted the price because the alternative was extinction. The Devourers had consumed 17 civilizations and would add Earth and the Vellani homeworld to that list unless they could be driven away. Sometimes survival required sacrificing everything you had built to save what mattered most. Lieutenant Hyen Su-nam coordinated timing sequences that had to be perfect down to the microsecond. Human and Vellani computers worked together to calculate the exact moment when every ship would pulse its quantum generators simultaneously. The mathematics were staggering and left no room for error. "Sir, we have calculated the optimal pulse timing," Nam reported, "but the coordination window is only 3.7 seconds. If any ship is early or late, the harmonic cascade will destroy our own vessels." Dr. Haewon Park served as the primary communication link between species that had never attempted such complex cooperation. Every order had to be translated perfectly, while maintaining the precise meaning that could determine success or failure. She carried the responsibility of ensuring that no misunderstanding would doom both civilizations. The Devourers seemed to sense the preparation for the pulse and began concentrating their attacks on key ships in the formation. Massive creatures pressed against the barriers with renewed fury, while smaller ones attempted to break through weak points. They understood that the defenders were preparing something dangerous. Ambassador Kethva coordinated Volani efforts while dealing with equipment failures throughout her fleet. The elegant alien ships had never been designed for the brutal energy levels required by the quantum pulse. Systems were burning out faster than they could be repaired, but retreat was no longer an option. "Admiral, our ships are failing, but we must hold the formation," Kethva transmitted as explosion lights flickered across her bridge. "If we lose harmonic resonance now, the pulse will tear apart space itself." Major Jinho Park led damage control teams that raced from ship to ship, trying to keep critical systems operational long enough to complete the pulse. His Marines had become emergency technicians working with alien equipment they barely understood. Every repair had to be perfect because there would be no second chances. The largest devourer in the swarm began pressing directly against Earth's orbital defenses, and Admiral Kim realized they were running out of time. The creatures feeding. Tendrils were reaching through weakening barriers toward the planet's atmosphere. Humanity's homeworld was minutes away from beginning the same dissolution that had claimed Mars. "All ships prepare for quantum pulse initiation," Kim broadcast to the combined fleet. "This is our only chance to save both our species. Every crew member, human and Volani, is a hero for what we are about to attempt," Technician Sora. Kim watched. Her engineering displays as power levels climbed beyond anything she had ever seen. The modified systems were holding together through determination and hope rather than sound engineering principles. She whispered prayers to gods she had never believed in, while keeping her hands steady on critical controls. Engineer Choi made the hardest decision of his life as he realized the pulse would require more power than their calculations had shown. Earth's primary quantum generator would have to be overloaded far beyond safe limits, and the explosion would tear a hole in space itself. Someone had to manually trigger the overload from inside the facility. "Admiral, I am detecting a shortfall in quantum resonance," Choi reported while studying the power distribution networks. "The pulse will fail unless we overload the primary generator on Earth. The explosion will create the additional energy we need, but it cannot be triggered remotely." Kim understood what Choi was offering and felt the weight of command crushing down on him. The engineer was volunteering to sacrifice his life to save both species. It was exactly the kind of heroic gesture that had made humanity famous throughout the galaxy. "Tae-min, you have served with honor," Kim said quietly. "Earth will remember your sacrifice." Choi smiled as he prepared to transport down to the quantum facility. "Admiral, humanity has always been willing to pay any price for freedom. Today, that price saves 2 worlds instead of 1. The quantum pulse began building as hundreds of ships channeled their energy into a coordinated burst of disruptive frequency. Space itself seemed to vibrate as harmonic waves spread outward from the combined fleet. The devourers recoiled from the energy patterns like living creatures touching fire. Captain Lee watched her fighters' power systems burn out as the pulse reached maximum intensity. Her squadron had given everything they had to maintain harmonic resonance, and now their ships were dying around them. But the pulse was working, and the devourers were being pushed back by forces they could not consume. The moment came when Choi triggered the overload at Earth's primary quantum generator. The explosion was visible from orbit as it tore a hole in the fabric of space itself. The additional energy boost pushed the quantum pulse to levels that drove the entire devourer swarm away from the solar system in desperate retreat. As the pulse faded and the immediate threat passed, both fleets began counting the cost of their victory. Half of Earth's ships were destroyed or crippled, while most of the Volani vessels had burned out their elegant systems beyond repair. The price of survival had been devastating for both species. Admiral Kim stood in the ruins of his command center and addressed a joint memorial service for the crews that had died saving 2 civilizations. Human and Volani names were read together as equals who had sacrificed everything for a cause greater than themselves. Engineer Choi's name headed the list of heroes. "We learned today that some enemies are too powerful for any species to face. Alone," Kim said, while looking out at the mixed crowd of survivors. "Our strength was never in our weapons or our independence. Our strength was in our willingness to stand together when everything we valued was threatened." Ambassador Kethva spoke for her people and acknowledged the debt the Volani owed to human courage and sacrifice. "Your species taught us that cooperation does not mean weakness. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from admitting you need help and accepting it when it is offered. Dr. Park began establishing permanent communication networks between Earth and Volani space, while Captain Lee took command of the first joint exploration fleet. The survivors had learned that the galaxy contained threats that required unified response, and they would be ready when the next crisis arrived. The memorial to Engineer Choi became a symbol of cooperation between species that had found strength in unity. Children on both worlds learned human and Volani mathematics while studying the heroic battle that had saved their civilizations. The universe remained dangerous, but two species now faced it together. Years later, when other alien civilizations asked how Earth and the Volani had survived the Devourer swarm, the answer was always the same. They had learned to laugh not at offers of help, but at the arrogance that made them think they could face infinite darkness alone. Sometimes the greatest victory was admitting you needed allies, and the greatest strength came from working together toward a common goal.